everybody, and welcome back to the Round 2 podcast. My name is Nikki, and I am super excited to have this week's guest here with me. Her name is Kerry, and we actually met in college. And actually, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but when we met because I went through sorority rush.
Mhm.
And first of all, I have to say that when I was in high school, I never imagined myself being in a sorority. I thought like that was just not the path for me. But then when I got to our college, we went to the University of San Diego. I realized that, it would probably be a really good way to meet people. And so I decided to go through Rush, but I had really, really low expectations.
Mhm.
You were a senior when I was a
Mhm.
freshman.
Mhm.
And I remember on the pref night, which is like the final night of Rush, you go back to the houses that had invited you back to come for that evening, and somebody that you've already met along the way will like invite you in and sit with you and spend
Mhm.
that evening with you. And you
Yeah.
were that person for me, and I
Yeah.
remember I
Mhm.
felt so cool because I had liked you so much during Rush, and
Yeah.
then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm back with this girl, and I thought she was so cool and so nice. So it's really neat to still be friends
That's
after all these years.
I know. I chose you because you know that, but yeah, I chose to
Yeah.
sit with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
cool. Like, that was just so
Yeah.
fun, and it's so crazy
And
to think that, like, in my mind wasn't that long ago, but it
mhm.
was,
I
like,
know. I know. It's
so long
incredible.
ago. That was, like,
Yeah.
1997.
I know. Unbelievable. We are not that old.
No, we're not. We're definitely not. So thank you so much for joining me today. I'm
Oh,
really excited
absolutely.
to have this conversation and hear your journey and your story. So why don't you introduce yourself and kind of a little background on you and where you're at now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so happy to be here with you. You have the best energy, and I love everything that you do and you put out into the world. And so to be a part of this is an honor.
Thank
My
you.
name is Kerry Forsell, and I am currently a life coach. And I've been doing that for the last 7, 8 years, give or take. Prior to that, I worked in corporate human resources, started off in recruiting, worked my
Okay.
way through more of a generalist capacity. And then my final full time position was as the director of human resources for a local action sports company out here in Orange County, California.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah, just the evolution of my career within HR was wonderful. I loved connecting with people. I loved helping and supporting them through their career choices and development and reaching their dreams and goals. And a friend of mine had been going through a coaching program
Mhm.
that was supported by her company, and a lot of the HR models were moving into more of a coaching format and or offering coaches to their employees. And so
Okay.
I thought, you know what, that would be great supplemental education for me to go through that. It's coaching
Sure.
is something that I could provide within the corporate structure. And so I went through a coaching program called CTI, and it is an internationally recognized coaching program. You put in over 1,000 hours of training and coaching.
Oh, wow.
And during that process, you're supposed to be practicing. You're supposed to be like putting in your hours.
Uh-huh.
And so I started reaching out to friends saying, hey, I need to, complete a certain number of hours of coaching. Do you know anyone that wants to be coached? And so made some connections that way. And one of the people I started coaching was a 18-year-old girl who had just gone through a breakup.
Oh, okay.
And we really, connected. Like it felt like really meaningful work to me. And
Uh-huh.
so the idea I had about going into corporate coaching quickly shifted as
Mhm.
referrals started coming in for young adults, both male
Mhm.
and female and non-binary. And so my goal in corporate was quickly changed into supporting young adults through transition, whether that's job or relationship, or just
Mhm.
really identifying like what's next for them. Anyone who
Yeah.
does remember their 20s like you and I do, it's
Yeah.
such there's just so much change that's happening. You've
Mhm.
been going through the school system for so long, you've been very direction oriented, and I take the classes, I graduate, I get the job. And there's a lot of 20 something year olds who get there and say, well, now what? Is this even what I want to be doing? Who am I? There's a lot of relationship changing happening. They're on the cusp of marriage, perhaps. And so it's been such fulfilling work. It's branched out from beyond just that. I do coach
Mhm.
a lot of business professionals, and I do
Okay.
coach anyone going through major transition. That seems to be probably my biggest area of focus. I've been through a
Okay.
lot of transition myself in my personal life. And
Uh-huh.
I found that working with my coach really helped me navigate who I am in those situations. What do I want for
Mhm.
my life? And sort of removing any barriers that I had put in place in order for me to get to where I wanted to go.
I love
Yeah.
that. Okay. So I love that you started off thinking you were going one route with the coaching in the corporate
Hmm.
environment and then,
Hmm.
kind of pivoting to the younger generation. How did you make the shift from leaving the corporate environment and doing this full time?
It just sort of started building. And so I was still working. I had two young children and I was doing consulting work. I was doing like contract recruiting or HR consulting on the side. So I had
Mhm.
like a couple contracts going, but I found that the coaching was starting to grow organically on its own. I didn't even have a website. Like it just started
Cool. I
evolving that
love
way.
that.
Yeah. So we're all referral based. And then, obviously came through and put together my website and all that. But
Mhm.
um, so a big theme in coaching also is taking those leaps of faith, those
Yeah.
jumping off the cliff moments where we have to decide, how do I want to move forward? I can't do both. I can't be all of the things all at once. And that's not to say you can't. It's just it wasn't a good fit for my lifestyle to keep doing the consulting work and
Mhm.
coaching.
Mhm.
My bandwidth was limited
Yeah.
in terms of raising small children. And so, yeah, it was a big leap of faith.
Oh,
And there
good
were
for you.
some months that I was like, what did I do? I need to go back to corporate. And then there
Yeah.
are moments where everything is in such alignment with where I'm at in my life right now and what I want to be putting out into the world, that feels good too.
I love that. So would you say that as of now, your biggest kind of funnel for new, I mean, here, let me back up. How many people can a coach at any given time? Like, what's your kind of headcount bandwidth as far as the amount of people that you can be giving to? Because that's going to take a lot of energy.
It does take a lot of energy. And so like if you're looking at an 8-hour day, you can't coach 8 clients because they're
Yeah,
hour-long conversations. There needs to be breaks in there for
sure.
rest. And it is there's a clearing process that I sort of need to go through after each call to
Hmm.
like really clear the information that's been, given, and then be clear with my next client. So,
Hmm.
I mean, ideally, I don't typically like to coach more than 5 people in one day.
Okay.
And then
That's a
some
lot of
clients are,
people.
that would be like a max day. For the
Okay.
majority of my days are about three. And
Okay.
then, and then, so in addition to the fact that I'm a single parent. So like my time also is given a lot to my children as well. So like finding that
Hmm.
balance is really important.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there was some other point I was going to make about the timing of things, but yeah, I mean, that's it for the most part. Like, but
Would you say
yeah.
that most of your clients are so here's a question
Mm.
before I ask that. Sorry, this is like got me really thinking on all these different paths right now. So, what would you say from your perspective, is the difference between a life coach and a therapist?
Yeah, that's a question that comes up a lot, especially when I'm doing like an intake call with somebody who's sort of
Hmm.
like questioning what it is that they want to do.
Hmm.
There are a lot of similarities in terms of, it's a lot of talking, right?
Yeah.
So there's talk therapy and then there's coaching. So coaching typically, the defining thing would be like, do you have a specific goal or something that you're
Hmm.
trying to accomplish? But that's not
Right.
always the case with coaching. I don't always have clients that come in with a specific goal,
Hmm.
other than the fact that they just don't like how either they're showing up in their life or what's presenting that they're having a hard time moving through. Like I
Hmm.
said, the transitional periods. And
Hmm.
so a therapist will really want to talk to you about like sort of what your mind frame is and how you got there, maybe dig in a little bit into your past and sort of try
Hmm.
to identify patterns in
Hmm.
terms of how and why you got to where you are. There's a,
Okay.
I would say therapy is probably a softer landing pad,
Uh-huh.
and a little bit more on I'm not saying that coaching is not supportive, but coaching is more of a coactive partnership between you and your client where you're committed to each other. And that includes a lot of feedback. So I
Hmm.
encourage my clients to give me feedback and I
Hmm.
give them feedback like, hey, you say you want this thing, but can I just, permission to give you some some information about what I'm seeing. You're saying this,
Right.
but you're doing that.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not saying that therapy doesn't do that. It absolutely does, but it might try to, not might, but it does dig into more of the psychological processes or neurological processes that our brain
Mhm.
goes through in terms of like why we do what we do. Whereas
Yeah.
coaching is more of a questioning why we do what we
Okay.
do.
Okay. No, I like hearing that because I have always leaned more towards coaching versus therapy. And I have gone to therapy at, points in my life, but it was always for like a very specific reason and
Hmm.
more so to like make sure that there was like an unbiased third party that was, going to help assure me that like I wasn't just totally losing my mind, right?
Yeah.
Whereas
Yes.
whereas
Yes.
like right now I have a coach and I've been with him now over a year and
Hmm.
I view it as more accountability.
Hmm.
I like that he obviously like we've created a great relationship, but I still feel like he's unbiased when it comes to a lot of things. So I when we first started working together, it was very much like career focused
Hmm.
and it was very much like my personal goals focused, but not really my personal life, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Hmm.
And now we've kind of shifted where like, I'll talk to him about dating and I'll talk to him about these things.
Hmm.
And it's kind of more like whatever are my priorities at any given time. And but what I like about him is that he'll bring like things back around where there was something that I started literally January of 23 when we very first started working together, and aside from one day I have made absolutely zero headway on it, and it's okay because it's just like a passion thing of mine.
Hmm.
And it's also deeply deeply personal to me, so he will be very gentle about like bringing it up. And in our last call, he was like, "So what are we thinking about?" And
Yeah.
I was like, "No, I'm like, I'm ready to like focus back on that and do it. And I think I have it more, so it's like, I was interested in hearing your thoughts because I feel like working with my coach, he's someone I could work with for a long time.
Hmm.
Whereas I've always viewed therapy, at least for me, as something that's more short term. But I know people
Yeah.
have had
Yeah.
therapists for years as well. So, I mean, I think it's just all
Hmm.
so personal at the end of the day.
It is, you know what, really, it's all about chemistry. It's like
Mhm.
you can find, I know a lot of therapists, a lot of psychologists that have actually, even during my own training that went through coaching, I feel like more therapists are taking on the coaching model
Mhm.
in their own work as well. So it's all about finding somebody that you have really good chemistry with.
Mhm.
And whether that's therapy or coaching, I think you're going to get a lot of benefits from it. I personally worked with a therapist when I was going through some really deep, heavy grief that I needed help processing. I
Mhm.
don't know. And there are grief coaches out there. So I'm not saying that coaching wouldn't be great for grief, but I think you'd want to find somebody that's trained in that modality.
Sure.
Where in therapy, you're going to have more of a larger spectrum of things that can be talked about in terms like grief, for example.
Mhm.
Whereas coaching is very client driven. I'm
Mhm.
not I'm not here to tell you what to do or how to do it. I'm fascinated by why you do or how you do what you do. Like if you were
Uh-huh.
my client and you said you had this passion project and you hadn't gotten to it, and this is what my coach does with me, is like, oh my gosh, I love that you haven't done it yet. Let's
Yeah.
why? Like let's figure that out.
Yeah.
That would be fascinating to me as your partner in coaching. Never any judgment or, you know, it's all about working together to figure out why, like again, like I said, why we do what we do, what are
Mhm.
our beliefs about ourselves,
Yeah.
what kinds of patterns have we dragged along with us all these years that we're willing to let go of.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's
And
a
then
big
just
thing.
having somebody mirror that back to you is invaluable because I think we have, as humans, we have blind spots. There's things we
Oh,
can't
for
see about
sure.
ourselves. Yeah. And so having somebody who will gently but firmly point those out to you and ask, hey, is this something you want to keep?
Mhm.
And if it's not, let's figure out how to get rid of it.
Yeah, it's so true. That kind
Yeah.
of stuff is definitely, it's so valuable. I mean, even if you find that type, I have a friend who's been just so instrumental in kind of holding that mirror in certain times and just being like, "Do you see this?
Yeah.
What you're doing? Don't fall back into that," and it's so
Yeah.
nice
Yeah.
to have that like security with someone where you can kind of falter backwards, because I feel like if we want to be, we can all continue to be like works in progress. And if we want to put into that work into ourselves, that we can continue to evolve and become better and acknowledge, wow, like this, I was acting like this in these situations, and I don't want to
Hmm.
do that anymore. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's so nice when you have someone who just without judgment can just kind of say like, "Hey, like take a deep breath, like chill, you're fine." You know?
Yeah, yeah, you're good. You're good. Yeah, if you repeated a pattern that you were working towards getting rid of, or behavior, or whatever, made a decision that was more in alignment with something you were trying to move away from, I would be fascinated into knowing like what's still stuck.
Yeah.
What's still stuck in the narrative that you have about yourself that maybe we need to look at a little bit further together, like
Mhm.
both being curious partners and looking at it together. One of my favorite quotes, and I might butcher it a little bit, is by Elizabeth Gilbert, who says, "We're simultaneously a masterpiece and a work in progress
Oh, I
at any
love that.
given time."
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like finding true, full bodied acceptance for where we are in
Mhm.
any given moment, and also striving to be better versions of ourselves.
Yeah, definitely.
Being able to hold both those at the same time. It's really important work.
It is. It is. So in your business, how do you find that you have people that have worked with you like for years at a time, or
Mhm.
do you have people that come and just say like, "Hey, I have 3 months and I want to accomplish these and I need someone to hold me accountable," or is it kind of all over the place?
It's half and half. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I've got some that are just come in for a quick, just either a quick goal or a quick fix, or just something that they can't really, like, again, they have a blind spot around something, or they're processing a transition, whether it's a job loss or a breakup, and they
Mhm.
just need some support to get through that moment in time, and then they're on their way.
Yeah.
Sometimes they circle back years later with another, you know,
Oh, that's cool.
topic that they want to
Uh-huh.
work through. But yeah, but then I do have some clients that I've worked with for quite a few years, on and off, as things come and go.
Mhm.
And yeah, so it's been both.
Nice. So from like a business side of things, so I mean, the actual act of what you're doing from a business perspective, how did you, step into that mindset of okay, like now I'm like in business for myself. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm in charge of all of these things. And what was that kind of transition like for you as your kind of just career unfolded in the direction that it went?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because I think as entrepreneurs, and again, I've read this somewhere and I don't know exactly who said it, but entrepreneurship will activate your imposter syndrome.
Mm,
And I totally get that, because it's like, who am I to be able to do this thing or put my
uh-huh.
work out into the world with such confidence? Like, there's
Yeah.
always going to be somebody better than me, and you're not working in an office, right? So you don't have coworkers that you're looking at and sort of gauging your progress next to,
Mhm.
whether it's how many hours you put into a day,
Mhm.
or just the kind of accolade. Like, there's no accolades, there's no review. It's just you and you.
Yeah, no
And so it'll
review.
really challenge your relationship to self,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And so, and that's still, there's still areas of that I struggle with, particularly around putting out a message on social media. It's like, who am I to say? Like, I never claim to be an expert at anything.
Mhm.
I am trained to listen. I am trained to ask questions. I'm trained to be curious.
Mhm.
I'm trained to be a mirror. But other than that, like, I don't, only you know the best way to live your life. So with that sort of imposter syndrome, there came moments where I'm like, what am I doing? Do I
Uh-huh.
continue doing this? And I think, and just the richness of the work is what kept me focused
No, that's
to keep
good.
moving forward, and
Uh-huh.
knowing how much my own coach helped me with
Sure.
my own life. Yeah. And so having that model. I think what's really important is surrounding yourself, whether they be aspirational, like somebody you see on social that is doing the work that you want to do, and they're making a good go at it, like having
Mhm.
people that you can look up to, whether they're personal or aspirational, that can help keep you grounded and focused.
Uh-huh.
And
No,
that's been
that's
that's good for me.
I love what you said about imposter syndrome because I made a comment about that on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, and
Mm,
then I had somebody, I can't remember who, somebody said something, or maybe it was maybe it just happened. Sometimes when you type something and then all of a sudden you start seeing more of what you were talking about, or like, and then you
Absolutely.
look
Yeah.
something up and then you get 25 ads for it and you're like, great. Um, well, I read something, or somebody was talking about imposter syndrome and how like it was something that was kind of almost created to make like women second guess themselves. And I have absolutely
Mm,
no idea if there's any truth to that, because I am certain that men have felt that way before as well. Because it's
mhm,
so weird as you're going out. Like I had a conversation yesterday morning, and it was a person that I got connected to, and we were talking about, his business needs. And then, I explained to him kind of like my career path and what I could offer and what I could bring to the
uh-huh,
table. And he was just like, "Oh my gosh," he's like, "I think you're just way too overqualified for like what I need." He was like, "But I have someone else that I want to introduce you to, because they're looking to restructure their team."
mhm.
And so it was almost like I had this moment where I was like, "Oh," I'm like, "Oh my God, wait, what?" And then I was like, "Wait, you literally just explained your career path. Like that is yours. You didn't make up any lies. Like you literally told him exactly what you had done over the last like
Yeah.
20 years. So like, why
Yeah.
are you sitting there being like, oh no, you know?"
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, no, I'm not too good for you. I can do it. Yeah. And it's like selling ourselves short.
Yeah.
I have found, and sort of back to the comment I made earlier about chemistry, is that there are
Mm-hmm.
clients that maybe I didn't have chemistry with, that
Yeah.
I thought, well, I'm an entrepreneur. I need to keep this, I need to keep any and all clients that come my way. And so
Mm-hmm.
coming to that place in my career where I realized I could have discernment and say, you know what,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm the right fit for you, but let me refer you out to some other options.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big turning point for me as well, because you're turning down income,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but at the sake of what, like, am I going to sell my soul in order to make a dollar? And that, I think, in being an entrepreneur, that's tricky, because there are
Mm-hmm.
some months that are amazing, and then there are some months where everyone's great and on
Yeah.
vacation, and you know, budget's low this month. And so
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then not feeling desperate,
Mm-hmm.
or that sort of anxious scarcity mindset is
Yes.
never helpful when you're trying to put yourself out into the world. And that's something I coach my own clients on as well, is that mindset is such an important
So important.
indicator of what we should be doing. Don't ever try to solve a problem when you're in a, like, having a really bad day.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
the solutions you come up with on a bad day to solve a problem are going to be very limited.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're feeling good, you've taken care of yourself, let's say you've got some exercise, you've got rest, you've eaten, and you're feeling grounded and good, then revisit the
Yes.
thing that you're trying to work on. But I think we get so stuck in, I have to do it now. It's
Mm-hmm.
now or never. The clock is ticking, and we're not coming from the right mindset.
No, that's so true. And it's so funny because I feel like I keep coming back to this, and I've had so many conversations about this as of late, where, I think that one of the things also is that like, because of social media and because we're just like constantly bombarded and like watching other people's lives and seeing what other people are doing,
Hmm.
it's almost like it's so easy to have this feeling that like, am I behind? Or,
Hmm.
is everybody like watching and waiting for me to do the next thing and judging me and this and that? And what I have said over and over is that like at the end of the day, like no one gives a shit what you're doing. Like no one
Hmm.
cares. So like work on your own timeline. Like at
Hmm.
night, like when you get in bed, what are you thinking about? You're thinking about you.
Yeah.
You're thinking about you, and like yeah, I mean, yes, you have kids, so you're likely thinking about your kids, but you're probably not going through like a list of your friends, clients, all these people, and
Yeah.
wondering about all of them like each night before you fall asleep. You're
Right.
focusing on you, and that's what we all are doing. So
Hmm.
it's like I try to constantly not only remind myself but remind other people, like, hey, you're doing your best and you're working on a timeline that works well for you. So just
Right.
keep going, keep going and
Right.
keep doing things to like make progression, but it's on your timeline.
Absolutely. We all have our own internal system that works at its own pace. And that's not to say that there aren't some days that you push a little harder and some days you rest more, but to compare ourselves to how other people are doing things and how quickly they're achieving their goals, and say, why aren't I? That's the kind of energy that's actually going to slow you down rather than speed
Totally.
you up.
It's so
Yeah.
true. It's so true. So, as far as, with bandwidth, right? Like you were saying, like, even though you have like some months where like everybody's great and like everyone's on vacation and you're like, okay, so what
Yeah.
types of things do you try to do to keep up with consistency in your business, or to what do you do when you get to a point? I think here's a better question, because consistency is part of that. What do you do when you have, a long line of potential clients and you're trying to figure out, like, how do I fit folks in if you're kind
Mhm.
of feeling like you're at capacity?
Um, well, I mean, there's creative ways you can go about it in terms of not all clients are every week, and so
Yeah.
I can work out a system where maybe it's every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, in order to fit time in. I just get really creative with my schedule, and I just keep an open mind. Like, it doesn't always have to be. I don't think coaching needs to be, an 8 to 6 p.m. job. I can
Mm-hmm.
do later calls. I can do calls on the weekends. And I just really try to fit it around my schedule. I wouldn't say I've ever been to a place where it wasn't manageable. It just always seemed to sort of flow in the right direction. Now, when there has been less clients, I'll revisit old clients, reach out, referral programs, things like that, just keeping communication open with
Mm-hmm.
people I've worked with in the past, or maybe somebody did like an intake call and then never circled back. I reach back out,
Mm-hmm.
start those conversations again. Yeah. And if that doesn't seem to pop, then I just always keep moving in the direction of the goal. And so there's always educational programs that I'll just be like, all right, great, this is that perfect time to take that course, or supplement my coaching training.
Oh, I love that. That's smart.
Yeah.
And that keeps like you
Yeah.
in a positive mindset too, where you're not sitting there worrying like, oh no, like I need
Yeah.
more. But then it's like, oh, let me use this time as like something valuable. Because kind of like what we
Hmm.
were talking about before we hit record, like time is the most valuable commodity because it's the only thing we can't get back. We can always make more money. We can always, do other things, but time is that one thing that's like once that minute ticks by, we're not going back to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yeah. And I think there's an element of trust and faith that as long as I keep moving in the right direction, I believe in momentum.
Hmm.
I'm a firm believer in momentum. So as long as I'm doing work that feels good, whether that's, doing a training or coaching somebody, that everything will fall into place.
Hmm.
And again, there are harder months than others. Um, I don't know, but I just keep the faith that it's going to be okay, because I think, again, going back to mindset,
Yeah.
and yeah, there's an infinite, and again, I'm stealing this from somebody. I think it's
Yeah.
Michael Bernard Beckwith, but he says there's an infinite number of solutions for any one problem.
Hmm.
And I totally believe that. It's like you can
Yeah.
have a problem and there's just an infinite number of solutions for that problem. But if you are in the mindset of scarcity or lack or fear, you're going to close off all of those potential opportunities.
Hmm.
And then there's things I've done in the past. I've gotten creative. Like I have done corporate coaching. I've done
Hmm.
corporate group events. So I'll
Hmm.
reach out to my friends in business and just say, hey, I just recently completed, you know, 2 hour training with this person's business. Would you be interested? And there's things like that
Oh,
that
that's
also have
great.
been helpful. Yeah.
I think that's super helpful. I mean, coming from just from coming from also a corporate background, we did some things where we would have different people come in and kind of work with us, whether we needed somebody to help us just realign on our goals for the year, or if we needed some like cohesiveness amongst the leadership team. It was nice to have that kind of like that unbiased third party, like we talked about, like someone to just be
Absolutely.
there and kind of be able to scan the environment and like see where the
Yeah.
obvious pain points are and tension is between people, and then kind of get us to back on track, like working towards that common goal.
Absolutely. I think group coaching is so powerful, because I think so often when we're in our heads, like, I'm the only one, or I'm the only one that struggles with this. I'm the only one that has a problem with this. I'm the only one that can't
Mm-hmm.
get this thing done. And in the group coaching environment, we realize our humanness and our connectedness and how
Mm-hmm.
similar we all are.
Yeah.
And maybe the things that hold us back aren't quite the same, but they're similar enough that we can feel really empowered and better about ourselves through the group coaching process.
Mm-hmm. So,
Yeah.
as someone who has been on the HR side in the corporate environment, and then, now you said you've been in coaching for what, 7, 8 years on your own.
Hmm.
What are your
Hmm.
thoughts as far as this kind of like coaching wave that's really been out there? And,
Yeah.
I mean, I see people on social media who are like, I'll coach you to be a coach. And I'm like, huh? Like what? It's like it seems like
Yeah.
there's a coach for almost any sort of topic these days.
There
So, what are
is,
your
and you
thoughts
can
on
be,
all of that?
I try to be non-judgmental about that, but yeah, I mean, there's coaching programs out there. Like, this is where the imposter syndrome comes in. And
Mhm.
I think the coaching, not only the coaching model, but the coaching industry is probably going to hit a point where there needs to be some more guidelines, accountability, structure to it, because anybody could be a coach.
Mhm.
And I myself went through like a really internationally recognized reputable company to get my training, but you could
Right.
also do a quick 30 minutes, become a coach, or no training at all, just be a coach.
Mhm.
Like, who's to say, you can't go out on Instagram and just say, hey, I'm a super successful coach.
Yeah.
There with the diff there's it can't be run through insurance. It's not like being a psychologist or a psychiatrist where you're getting the
Mhm.
educational background. The certification is different. So yeah, I again, it's like, I think in the self-help mental wellness world, like, we can't have enough support. I always caution people to be really careful about anyone who promises you anything.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is.
Mhm.
Because I
Mhm.
think at the end of the day, the coaching model is about empowering the individual that we're coaching, that they know what's right for them. I would never in a million years say, I know what is right for you, Nikki. Like, I
Yeah.
would ask you questions to get you to the point where you had your own aha moment.
Mhm.
And I have no judgment around whether or not I think, unless you were like about to like harm yourself, I'd be like, whatever you decide
Yeah.
to do, you have all the answers. Cause I know that everything is a stepping stone on the path to our development. And even
Mhm.
if it's a mistake, I don't even believe in mistakes. I think they're all growth opportunities. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, my thing would be, what's their background, educational
Mhm.
background? Is there any certification that they've received? Look into that company, and then be wary of those who promise to fix you.
Yeah.
Because guess what? You're not broken.
Right. Okay. Well, it's funny because you answered the question that I was going to say is like, what should people be looking for? Because, it's got me thinking back on kind of like the health and fitness industry. Because there was a
Hmm.
time, I don't know, probably 10 or so years ago, where it was like all these, fitness guys and gals were, releasing programs and, here, follow my program and you'll be super fit, or follow this eating program and you'll lose 25 pounds. And a lot of people ended up getting called out, and there were some that had really really big issues, and I don't know if lawsuits, but like big issues where people came after them pretty hard because they realized that like the customized plan was actually just a copy paste and it wasn't anything different for anybody, and
Yeah.
they were making all this money and then like showing off this lavish lifestyle of like, oh, like buy my program, and then all these people were like, wait, I did buy your program and it didn't do anything for me. So it just
Yeah.
made me wonder if in this like coaching space, if there's going to be kind of that tidal wave of, you know, people who aren't necessarily qualified at doing this job, if that kind of shakes out with, over time. And then those of you who are, who are educated and who have been doing it for the right reasons, and
Mhm.
who, aren't making promises that are impossible to deliver on, are going to be the ones that stay.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. I mean, you could say it with any industry, really. There's a lot of people out there that
Hmm.
claim to do things that they, aren't able to do. I just think that making sure that again, it'll come back to that nobody can promise you anything.
Right.
And I do think, COVID had a big impact on a lot of us from a mental and physical health
Mhm.
standpoint. And a
Mhm.
lot of people were, home and hungry for information on, how do I use this time to either propel myself physically or mentally, or
Mhm.
work on those things I never worked on. And so there was a sort of influx of information on the socials that
Mhm.
promised you the world and showed you the glossy photos of, look how great I look.
Mhm.
And on the back end, truths were coming out about the individuals that were a little unsavory. You can
Mhm.
find this anywhere, though. You can find it in any industry, really, is like people making promises that they can't deliver on,
Yeah.
or
Well, it's like
their
anytime there's a
intentions.
down market in real estate, right? Shakes out a lot of the agents that were really there just to like make a quick buck when the
Yeah.
market was hot. And then the ones who actually, have been in it for years, understand the market, understand the fluctuations in interest rates, understand
Yeah.
inventory,
Hmm.
all those different things. They're the ones who actually end up sticking around. So,
Right. Not getting in trouble.
Yeah,
So yeah,
exactly.
or
Exactly.
called out, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. So what would you say is your, absolute favorite thing about being a coach?
Gosh, those moments of like pure clarity when it all clicks,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh my gosh, that's the thing, or there it is, like that there it is moment where the identification of either something that is completely being released within the moment, and generally it's all thought patterns or thoughts that we
Mhm.
have about ourselves that we didn't even know we were carrying,
Yeah.
that somewhere along the line we learned to show up. I'll give an example because it's probably the best way to describe it. Like, let's say you're a chronic people pleaser and you
Mhm.
don't even really know that you are because it's a
Mhm.
blind spot. And you're working with your coach and you're trying to figure out, like, why am I not advancing in my career? Or why am I not getting back? I'm putting in all this effort, whether it's in relationships or work, and I'm not getting anything back. And
Mhm.
then we sort of start questioning the way, you show up and your ideas around, what you feel you're worth. And then we
Mhm.
we tap into this people pleasing side and the self-sacrifice that comes along with that, and not being
Mhm.
truly authentic, and then the light bulb goes off and it's like, oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
don't want to do that anymore.
Uh-huh.
Right? I don't need everybody to like me. I'm not
Yes.
responsible for
Yeah.
everybody's happiness. I don't make
Mhm.
the company go round. Like, it's those
Yes.
moments. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah. And
God.
so,
I feel
and
like
then
I've had all of those
identifying it.
moments. I'm like, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. As a recovering people pleaser, like, yeah,
Yeah.
that hits close. But yeah, and it's like, okay, so now what? Okay, this
Mhm.
information, we had the aha moment, the light bulb went off, and then it's like creating those like micro steps
Yes.
of like seeing when it comes up, and that's the first step to any change, is just being aware.
Mhm.
Don't do anything with it, is my only advice. Like, you're aware, your awareness is huge. So
Yeah.
you're aware of, oh, here I go again.
Mhm.
I'm on the phone with so and so when I really want to be giving my time to something else, or
Oh.
I'm sacrificing this in
Mhm.
order to gain what I think is going to help me gain that, and it's not
Mhm.
working out. And just notice when you're showing up that way, going back to the people pleaser example. And then after you've done enough noticing and you've
Mhm.
found certain areas where it's showing up, then what are the micro steps that you can take
Mhm.
in that moment to make change? Because
Yeah.
change all at once can be really uncomfortable, and if we get too uncomfortable, we'll just be like, you know what, it's just easier to be a people pleaser because I just ruffled a lot of feathers and people are very unhappy with me.
Oh my gosh.
So making those micro changes is really
Mhm.
important, and then just building. That's where a coach holds you accountable. That's where a coach reminds you of how far you've come.
Mhm.
Remember, you used to do it that way, but now look at you. You're doing it, you're doing the work,
Yeah.
and that's really important.
That is. And I love all those things that you just said. I mean, there were so many things that just resonated so much with me. It just and it is so true. It's like those little things and recognizing behaviors. And I think the biggest one that you said that is so important to acknowledge is knowing that, like, just because I am this way today doesn't mean I have to be this way tomorrow.
Mhm.
And it's
Mhm.
okay to be evolving and be comfortable with owning my evolution and kind of saying, like, no, this doesn't work for me anymore, and I'm not going to do this anymore. I mean, it made me think about a couple of weeks ago. I had a conversation with a friend who I hadn't spoken with in quite some time, and
Mhm.
I was excited to chat with her because it had been a while, and I was like, oh, we'll have
Mhm.
some cool things to catch up on. Well, the it ended up the first 30 minutes of the conversation was basically just her talking to me about something going on in her life, and I was driving, so I was just kind of like, okay, well, all right. But I was also
Yeah.
like, I I don't I'm not really excited about being a part of this conversation right now because
Yeah.
I would rather be, on the phone feeling like I was, accomplishing something and,
Mhm.
learning something versus being like a sounding board. And
Mhm.
it was just bizarre to me, the whole thing. And so anyways, when I hung up, I was like, okay, I'm not doing that again. And whether or not, like, I didn't, and in retrospect, I wish I would have stopped her after about 5 or 6 minutes and said, hey, look, it sounds like you've got a lot going on right now. Maybe we should catch up at a different time because I'm sorry you've got this going on, but, like, this is not really the reason that we had said we were going to talk. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah.
And that's your awareness, right? So you had
Mhm.
awareness in the moment and you were present to the awareness. And then based on your awareness of the dynamic, you decided going forward to make change.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so that's where it all starts, right? It's like, oh, here
Yeah.
I go doing that thing again.
Yeah.
Okay, how do I want to going forward? How do I want to do that? It's crazy the kind of rules and restrictions we put on ourselves in terms of like how we show up in
Oh
the
my
world.
gosh.
It's like
Totally.
when I came to the idea like that I don't have like if I'm available and my phone rings, I don't have to answer it.
Yeah.
Like little things like that. I was like, I
Right.
don't have to be available
Yeah.
all the time to everyone. In
Yeah.
fact, I can go a whole day without answering my phone
Uh-huh.
or getting back to people that are like
Right.
on a personal level, right? Like
Yeah.
obviously not professional, but
Well, yeah, and like
yeah,
you
it
said, you don't
just
have to answer a text the second your phone I mean, I actually
yeah.
went through my phone and I turned off notifications for almost everything. So it's like I'll get
Yeah.
the little bubble that will say, that I have
Sure.
text messages, but it's not making my phone light up when it's sitting next to me. It's been
Right.
so nice to not feel interrupted
Uh-huh.
and by just notifications of things that if it's something super urgent, someone's going to call, they're going to keep calling if they really 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 need me. But if someone's just
Mhm.
sending a text, it's not usually, it shouldn't be time sensitive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's been nice to
Absolutely.
not feel bothered by all these different
Mhm.
apps that want to notify you every time something changes.
Oh gosh, I know we are so bombarded with information. I think one of the best things we can do for our mental health is, like you said, is silencing those notifications, limiting the amount of exposure we have to outside stimulus,
Mhm.
throughout the day, once a day, whenever you can to really ground yourself. And that could be in meditation, which I'm a huge fan of. It could be journaling, it could be
Mhm.
reading, just really trying to limit the amount of input that we're taking in
Yeah.
is such an important part to our mental health and well-being, but I don't think many of us prioritize that because it's the norm. Our phone,
Right.
our watch, something is constantly trying to get our attention.
Mhm.
And so we just think that's how the world works.
Mhm.
And it's not how the world works. And we
No,
have
it's
to we creating space is also something I'm really passionate about, creating
mhm.
space between things,
Mm.
creating space between stimulus. Like clearly after I have a work call, I need to create a little space in between the next one.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I also think it's sort of that whole concept of meditation, the space between the stimulus and the response.
Mhm.
But I also try to create space anytime I'm transitioning from one thing to another. And that could be from work to kids or kids to exercise. It's like giving myself a minute to just sort of recognize where I just came from and where I'm
Uh-huh.
about to go
Oh, I
and
like
creating little
that.
pocket, like the smallest pocket of time to just catch my breath,
Mhm.
center,
Mhm.
and so because a lot of times what I noticed is I was jumping from one thing to the other, my brain or my mind was still on the last
On
thing I
what was
was
left.
doing.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I'm forgetting where I'm going. I'm not getting things done very efficiently because I hadn't taken that moment to just sort of center
Mhm.
and acknowledge where I was coming
Yeah.
from.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, God, I think about the vision that popped into my head when you were saying that is like a corporate calendar where it's just like, back to back to back meetings all day long. And it's like you have
Oh, they're
no time
overlapping. They're
to like,
overlapping. I was like,
yeah.
yeah, when's my bio break? Like
Yeah,
I
and
don't
when
even
am
know
I
where to
supposed to
breathe
like
here.
decompress and like think about the meeting I
Yeah.
just came out of and maybe like
Yeah.
take a few more notes or just kind of go,
Mhm.
wow, that was a lot or whatever
Mhm.
it may be.
I think reminding ourselves what the definition of an emergency is,
Mhm.
especially within the corporate world. This is not an emergency. This
Yeah.
is not a life threatening situation. This
Yeah.
can wait. This doesn't need to be figured out right this moment. It doesn't need to be figured out yesterday.
Mhm.
I can create space for myself because guess what? I'm going to show up as a better, more productive employee,
Absolutely.
human. And so again, it's sort of like what we talked about in the beginning of the call, where never make a decision or try to
Yep.
come to a conclusion when you're not in a good state of mind or
Mhm.
headspace mindset. It's creating pockets of time for ourselves to really ground and decompress and take a breath.
Mhm.
It's going to make us so much more not only productive but creative,
Yes.
solution oriented, balanced.
The
Yeah, so I'm a
creative
big
thing
proponent of that.
is interesting because I read something recently and it talked about how, creative people need, which is all of us, if we're being honest, right? We all have some form of creativity inside of us, whether or
Hmm.
not we tap into it or not. But it was talking about, and I think that this really like bodes itself well for like entrepreneurship because like whether you don't have to be like this crazy artist or, I feel like sometimes you think you say the word creative and it makes you think of, an
A
artist or
painter.
a
Yeah,
musician, yeah, a
yeah, yeah.
painter,
No.
and
Hmm.
it's not necessarily, but I really think an entrepreneur is a creator because you're creating a business, you're creating a life, you're creating an offering, a product, a service, whatever it may be. You're
Hmm.
creating
Hmm.
something for other people. But it said that like creatives need that downtime to just like zone out and chill and think. And I started paying more attention to that and thinking about that. And then I actively recognized not that long ago that when I had a day where I was just like, I am toast. I want to just, get up, have a walk, and then I'm just going
Uh,
to chill out the rest of the day. And I noticed that like I had these really great thoughts that started coming through. And so I was like, oh, wait a minute, I better write that down. I'm like, oh, I better remember that to like think about when I'm actually back to work, the next day. And I was like, maybe I am more creative than I thought I was. So,
yeah, we all are creatives.
yeah.
We're all creators. We're creators of the work we do. We're creators of our reality. We
Mhm.
create the life that we live in. So we are
Mhm.
all creatives, whether we're painting or writing or creating a business or coming up with a proposal, whatever it is. Like we're constantly making things.
Yeah.
And again, it could be just our reality that we're making or we're creating. And so I know exactly what you're talking about. I think I read the same articles that creatives, and again, I think it applies to anyone. They really do need that downtime. And one thing
Mhm.
I would add to that is play. I
Mm,
think
mhm.
play is so underestimated. The benefits and value in play and being in flow, which play generally is. It's just those moments where you're not thinking about what's next
Mhm.
and you're enjoying yourself. You're doing something that nourishes you or fills up your soul, makes you laugh, makes you light. I think that those are so important to carve out more time for because I do. I think all of it relates to us being happier, more balanced, productive, creative, you know, these great idea moments. It makes us better individuals altogether.
Absolutely.
And of course, this has been said a thousand times, but like people always say, oh, my greatest ideas come in the shower.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
it's not the water. I mean, although water is very powerful, it's because you're taking a minute
Uh-huh.
to just not have any outside stimulus other than
Right.
them. You're in a literally in a container
Yeah,
where
yeah.
you you can't get up and do something else or answer the phone or do the laundry or
Right.
take a call, but you can't do anything. And so you're in that moment, it's relaxing,
Mhm.
and your thoughts are like, oh, finally, you
Yeah.
slowed down for a minute.
Yeah.
We have a lot to say.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
No, I always say like my best thoughts come when I'm out walking. Like I
Hmm.
feel like when I'm in motion, that's when like my mind gets rolling and I'll think of little things. I'm like, ooh, well, we should do that. We should do that. I should do this. And but also,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
the
shower
same
thoughts are
idea.
unparalleled as well.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, the walk is great too, but so many times we throw in our AirPods when we're on a
Yeah.
walk.
Yeah.
And I don't I think music is fine, but like if you're like, oh, I'm constantly either listening to a podcast or a book or I'm on the
Mhm.
phone talking to a friend, if we're constantly being bombarded with stimulus, it's
Mhm.
really hard for our creative nature to blossom in that environment.
Yeah. Well, this has been so enjoyable talking with
Yeah,
you and hearing
it's
about
so
your
good.
career and the evolution of your coaching business. So, thank you so much for being here and for sharing everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, is there any like social handles you want to share, websites you want to share?
Yeah, my website is kerryforsell.com. Maybe we could put a link
Yeah, I'll
for
put it in the
those who are
description.
interested. Yeah, and you can find me there. My number, email are listed.
Awesome.
And yeah, would love to connect with anybody who's interested in learning more about coaching.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much,
Yeah,
Carrie.
thank
All right,
you.
bye.
Bye.